So here we are. We're having our very first interview on Chirogold. And, the whole purpose of creating this was very simple. I wanted to do what little I can do and the most I can do to help spread the message of objective, straight chiropractic for a lot of reasons. Number one, I just believe it's certainly the purest way to practice, but I believe it makes the most sense. It's the most logical way that has the greatest benefit on the greatest number of people. So the whole idea here, we want to get out there and spread this message, and I thought there'd be no better way to do so than to have our first interview here be with what I believe is a true legend in chiropractic, and that's Dr. Joe Strauss. And I say this for a few reasons. If you look at the Facebook page, you'll see there's 4 pictures at the top, and we've got Dee Dee, BJ, Reggie Gold, and Joe Strauss. And I picked those 4 people because, in my opinion, these guys, if we could somehow make a Mount Rushmore of chiropractic, those are the faces that should be up there. And obviously, we have the Palmers since they started the whole thing. But then we have Reggie and Joe up there because nobody, in my opinion, has done more to further the message of chiropractic like those two have, and kept it pure and in the line with what BD and BJ, I think, truly intended chiropractic to be. So it's only fitting then that we have Dr. Strauss here today. And for those of you who maybe haven't been exposed to him like you hopefully should, just a quick little background. Dr. Strauss graduated from the Columbia Institute of Chiropractic back in 1967. It's now New York Chiropractic College. And in that time, what's interesting about Dr. Strauss is that a lot of chiropractors, let me put it this way, you think about success in general, successful people, sometimes you have people who are really good at teaching, and they're not really that great at doing that thing. You think of a sport, you might have a coach who is a fantastic coach and teaching that sport, but he might not have been very good at playing the sport. And then you have the other way around. We have great athletes who are really great at doing that thing, but they can't teach other people. Well, Dr. Strauss is unique here in that not only did he do it, but he did it for a long time in a major way, seeing over 1,500 people a week, near 2,000 people a week for a long time. But then on top of that, while doing that, he was spending time teaching chiropractic at Pennsylvania College of Chiropractic. And just 1999 was voted the Chiropractor of the Year by Sherman College of Chiropractic. And so Dr. Strauss has really done it all. Fantastic teacher, fantastic chiropractor, and there's very few people like him ever in the profession. So it is my great honor to be able to have Dr. Strauss with us here today. So thank you, Dr. Strauss, for joining us.
Thank you, Kim.
Absolutely. Now, here's the first thing I want to start with. Because, again, like I mentioned, the whole purpose of this Facebook page and doing these interviews and creating all this is to help spread the message of objective, straight chiropractic. Now, problem is, a lot of people have never even heard of that. They don't even know what that means. They never heard those words described. So I thought maybe you could just start by telling us what it is, what it means to be an objective straight chiropractor versus maybe a traditional straight chiropractor, or what we might refer to as a mixer chiropractor.
Well, I've kind of gotten away from using the term mixer because that has kind of a negative connotation and seems like it's kind of an insult to those people who have another approach to chiropractic. And so I've kind of gotten away from using that term because it's usually said through clenched teeth, and I think that there's a lot of different ways to approach chiropractic, and I've gotten used to using the term synchronistic chiropractic because those people who have blended chiropractic with something else, and mainly the objective of medicine to cure, to treat, to alleviate conditions or diseases. That's why I call it synchronistic chiropractic.
Okay, I like that.
And I think that's a little less harsh to those people who don't want to be called a mixer, which is usually prefaced with a few adjectives prior to it that
Yeah,
are
it's true.
really not applicable to the airwaves.
Gotcha. Fair
So
enough.
I use that term synchronistic chiropractic, and I think this is the first time I've really used it in a public way. And so
Yeah.
you are you're the individual who has
We can start
benefited from
something new
that.
right now. Good.
Yes. So I think that there, traditional chiropractic has evolved over the years, just like traditions have evolved over the years. Uh, Regular traditions have evolved over the years. For example, um, what used to be called uh, Armistice Day was developed after World War One. That was the Great War to end all wars, and
Yeah.
obviously it
Didn't
didn't
quite
end
do it.
all wars, and they're still going on. So, but that would be Armistice Day, and it was, I think, the 11th of November at 11 o'clock in the morning. That's when it was 11
Yeah.
at 11 a.m. And that was supposed to be the Armistice Day. Since then, we've changed the name. So the tradition of Armistice Day has now become what we call Veterans Day. So there's a tradition that has even changed in name.
Sure.
And I think chiropractic began the objective of D.D. Palmer was to, and B.J. Palmer was to correct vertebral subluxations or correct an interference to the expression of the innate intelligence of the body to the material part of the body. That was their objective. And so we've kind of held to that objective, and that's why I hold in great esteem BJ and D.D. Palmer, although they have changed things over the years. In fact, D.D., if you read some of his early writings, he actually talked about correcting interference in the toes, between the toes, and I guess chiropractors have gotten away from that idea, which I'm very glad for.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't want anybody wiggling my toes, and I didn't want to wiggle anybody's toes to correct supposed interference between them. But the rest of the traditions of chiropractic began and evolved over that period of time. And so to um, kind of get an understanding of the evolvement or the evolving of the traditions of chiropractic, what we have done is use this term traditional chiropractic, which kind of synchronized or attempted to synchronize some of the therapeutic approaches, or what we call
Right.
medical approaches, with chiropractic approaches, kind of blending together, and that's where the term mixer came from. And DD said, I don't mix, I never have, but his understanding of chiropractic was, I think, getting sick people well, and BJ kind of continued that understanding of chiropractic, that it was the idea of getting sick people well.
Right.
And all we have done now with objective straight chiropractic is kind of reduce that to what I think is the purest form of chiropractic, which was really the intent of the Palmers, and is the intent, I think, of many people today, even though they call themselves traditional chiropractors. But I think their intent is still to remove interference to the expression of the innate intelligence of the body. And I think that's what we do. Just like Armistice Day is now being called Veterans Day, and in which we honor veterans, but because Armistice didn't really end all wars.
Right.
So that's and the traditions have changed over the years. Obviously, the first aspect of the tradition was to cure every disease, and that began the idea of blending together the medical objective
Sure.
and the chiropractic objective. And so we've just kind of tried to reduce or to get rid of all the extraneous things and just reduce it to what is the simple objective of chiropractic. And so we've come up with the term objective chiropractic to simplify it and to make sure that it is clearly what the Palmers really intended it to be.
Yeah.
And in doing that, we've had to reduce some of the things like that Dee Dee said, like getting rid of interference in the toes, or things that BJ said, even the idea of getting sick people well,
right.
And the things that have been in added to that. I was listening to a radio program the other day, and where the individual identified himself as a retired chiropractor, and he was talking about putting finger cuts up people's noses, and and that was what he was doing. So that's kind of got taken to an extreme,
right?
And I think that clearly is something that I don't think any chiropractor today would want to do. But he said he did it. He was a retired chiropractor, and I said, "Well, thank goodness he's retired."
Yeah, that is good. So anyway,
the traditions have changed over the years, and of course, we know that even now we have chiropractors who want to diagnose and treat disease, and I think that occurred really at the time in which the profession really kind of split in half, and from mixer to straight, and we said that, well, let's define it by our objective, and that was not something that I did. I think that really occurred at Sherman College back in the 70s, and that was the development of the Federation of Straight Chiropractic Organizations in the beginning.
So you hear this stuff and you wonder, how does that happen? We have this objective of helping people by correcting subluxations to allow a greater expression of their innate intelligence. So what do you see is the tripping point for chiropractors in terms of allowing all the other things to get into practice, all the therapies and the modalities and all of that? How does that happen, do you think?
Well, I think it's because we have not defined ourselves by clearly our objective. We defined ourselves by what everybody in society, or what we think people in society want us to do or want us to accomplish. And of course, the major one is getting rid of conditions, getting rid of diseases, getting sick people well. That's been the medical objective. And so we've just said, well, if we can just appropriate that medical objective and try to define chiropractic in light of that. And I think that's what people have done. And of course, you can see that it's been kind of a slippery slope that has caused our profession to. We have chiropractors now who really want to practice medicine, and they say, well, we're better at practicing medicine than medical doctors are. And
that's crazy.
I spoke at a chiropractic college a number of years ago, and in fact, it was my former alma mater, and I think that was the last time they invited me there. But one of the students said, I found something on an X-ray that medical doctors missed, and I think, well, that's good for you, but there's probably 100 things that medical doctor would find on an X-ray that that you wouldn't find. And so let's do the one thing that we can do, and that thing is the location analysis and correction of vertebral subluxations. And of course, that's something that the medical profession claims doesn't exist, or they define it in another way than we define it, as far as the difference between the expression of the innate intelligence of the body and the lack of expression of the innate intelligence of the body. So I think that we have gone down that slippery slope to a place where some chiropractors say we should diagnose and treat medical conditions.
Right. And some chiropractors, I think, I think will agree, a lot of them do it because they're caring, compassionate people, because, they want people to feel better. They care about people. They don't like seeing people sick. So they think that if they can provide maybe quote unquote more care, that they're somehow doing them a better service. So what would you say to the chiropractors that, like, Joe, I want people to feel better. I just, I want to give them more than just chiropractic.
Well, I think that we need to understand that people want to maybe want more than just to feel better, and we provide the one service that we can provide, that's the removal of interference to the expression of the innate intelligence of the body. But that's the only thing that we do provide, and that there's other people who can do other things. In fact, I'm probably stepping ahead, but you mentioned the fact that B.J. Palmer in his research clinic used to have exercise programs, but that was he did what they call what we call PT today. But what he was doing was realizing that health or wholeness or the proper function of an individual necessitated more than just feeling good or having interference corrected. You needed other things too, and some of those other things included exercise, and so he provided exercise in the B.J. Palmer clinic. Not that it was the practice of chiropractic, but that it was something that people needed. And we recognize that today. We say that people need to exercise. They need proper nutrition, proper food, and it's just that we don't claim to be able to provide all those things as an objective straight chiropractic, because that falls outside our objective. Not that it's not necessary, not that it's not valuable, but that it does fall outside the objective of chiropractic, and that we should have other people who provide those things, and even to the practice of medicine and the treatment of medical conditions. There are the times when people need the treatment of medical conditions, but there is a profession that's designed to provide that, the medical profession and the allied practices of that.
So, but getting to that point again, wouldn't the person who wants to have a more synchronistic practice use that as justification for saying, well, then I should be doing this in my practice because BJ had it there? And I think the thing, maybe one of the misconceptions that people have towards objective straight chiropractors is that they think that we don't feel that exercise or nutrition or those things are important, which of course is absurd. We all recognize the importance of those, but like you said, we just want to leave that to the professionals. Let's let the nutritionists do the nutrition stuff. Let's let the medical doctors do the medical stuff. So on that point again, though, the fact that BJ recognized that, which is an obvious fact, and then he had it in his clinic. So I think maybe the, again, synchronistic chiropractor might look at that and go, well, BJ did it, so I'm going to do it too. So why shouldn't we have PT in our practices if BJ was doing it there?
Well, I think that a lot of chiropractors agree with that idea, and that's why they do those other things in their practice. And I'm just not sure that that people can understand what we do as chiropractors when we put other things in there, and and to the point where people say, well, you should run a finger cut up your nose. And
where do you draw the line? Just keep going and going and going.
Yeah, there's some point where you need to say, I'm really not qualified to do those things. And I think that's where we decide that we need to define our objective and have an objective and stick to that objective and recognize that anything else falls outside that objective and should be done by somebody else. I think that we need to focus our attention on getting people to realize just how important having their subluxations corrected, having the interference between the innate intelligence of the body and the physical material of the body, that interference removed, rather than all these other things. We have that one specific area. I happened to go to, I was having some problem with my eyes, and I happened to go to I had a problem with my eye before, and so I went to an ophthalmologist, and he looked at me. He said, "No, your eyes are fine. There's nothing wrong with your eyes." And I said, "Well, what do you think it is?" Now I know that an ophthalmologist, he was not an optometrist, he was an ophthalmologist, which means he's a medical doctor, which means I'm sure he met medical school. And he said, "Oh, I wouldn't venture to say what else is wrong with you. I think you should check with your family doctor, and he'll send you to the right place." And I thought, "Well, you're an ophthalmologist, which means you are a medical doctor." And he said, "Well, I wouldn't endeavor to get into those things." And I think that we should kind of do the same thing as chiropractors. Say, well, if you need some other expertise, you need to go to somebody else, whether it's your family doctor or whether it's the emergency room of the hospital or wherever you need to go. But we don't try to do those things. And I think that would lend more credibility to the specific objective that we have, and give people more respect for what we do, rather than thinking that we are a jack of all trades and a master of none.
I was just going to say that, and I think that's so important. I think I at least, have this desire. I want to be great at something. I want to try to be average at a bunch of things. And that's a great example there that you just had of your ophthalmologist, where he was staying in his lane, so to speak. And I think that's maybe the lesson we want for chiropractors is we can be proud of what we have to offer. We don't have to try to add other things to it to make it better, because it doesn't really in the end make it better.
No, I think it confuses the public, and I think that's what really our intention is, to get the public to really truly understand what we do and not be confused by what we do. And I think that the more we stick to our objective and getting people to understand how important that objective is, not that it precludes anything else, or not that it includes anything else, but that it is an important objective, and it does have an important place in people's lives.
Right. Well, I think too, when you start to look at this, you think about affecting people's lives. The objective chiropractic message is, and the application of that message is for everybody. Everyone, can benefit from having regular chiropractic care, because if they're subluxated, they're not as well off as they could be. Whereas having the more synchronistic practice, again, limits the influence you can have on the public. Correct?
Absolutely. It says that what we do is not important. So we need to find that balance between what we do as being important and vital and necessary to people, but that it doesn't include everything else, and it doesn't exclude anything else, the need for anything else. And people need to understand who they go to, or what they choose to do to gain that other expertise is something that we really don't take a role in doing. And that's part of the practice of medicine. That's part of the objective of medicine, is to determine what specific care an individual needs. Now, it would be nice if every medical doctor would say, well, you need chiropractic care, but unfortunately, that doesn't happen that often. So
No.
it becomes necessary for us to apprise people of that need for chiropractic care. And I think that's one of the things that a synchronistic approach to chiropractic fails to do to people, is to get them to understand the importance of chiropractic care and having that objective of chiropractic care met by a chiropractor,
Right.
because we're the only ones who do that.
Sure. And I think, again, we always, in chiropractic, often hear the example of how osteopaths have kind of just disappeared, and they've been blended into the medical profession. And chiropractic, I think, is maybe on that path. And I hate to say it, but because when we're becoming less unique, so therefore less necessary, because if we start duplicating these services that other people already provide, then, well, what's the benefit or use of us? And so I think that, again, is why it's important that we stay on our unique objective, is so that we stay a relevant and useful profession.
Yeah, I had a conversation with a chiropractor once, and I said, he said, if we continue to blend these things together, we can be just like osteopaths.
Oh.
And I said, yes, if we continue to blend those things together, we'll be just like osteopaths. And right now, an osteopath is performs medical approaches. In fact, I've been to an osteopathic. When I was growing up and going through school and all, osteopaths were kind of unpopular
Sure.
and
Yeah.
looked down upon by the medical profession. But now they're within the medical profession and part of the medical profession.
Right.
And I think that, and in fact, I've talked to a few osteopaths and say, well, is there anybody who adjusts verbal subluxations? And they say, no, we don't do that kind of stuff anymore. That's not part of our objective. And I think that's one of the things that we really are concerned about, is that the unique service that we have to provide for the public will be lost if we synchronize chiropractic with the medical profession.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest danger, because the service that we perform is an important service to people, and an important service for humanity, and for every single person, like you said. Right. Every single person who has a spine needs to have that spine checked on a regular basis to see if they have any subluxations. Does that mean they don't need good food? No, they still need good food. Does that mean they don't need exercise? No, they still need to have exercise in their body. And if they need to have that service provided, or that service taught to them by somebody else, then they need to go to somebody else and receive that expertise.
Right. Well, it's like my daughter a couple of years ago. She was ice skating and she fell and broke her arm. Well, we took her to the medical doctor. I think a lot of people who are maybe anti-chiropractic, period, or anti-objective straight chiropractic, they have this idea that we're all anti-medicine, that we're against medicine. Whereas, and again, I think it's, as you're saying, we recognize they have their place. They're important. They play an important role. When my daughter broke her arm, I'm very thankful we had the right people who can go and fix that thing. And my dad had a heart attack a few years ago, and he'd be dead right now if it wasn't for that emergency care he received. So I think, we're talking about, you mentioned a moment ago how many in the medical profession don't refer to chiropractors. And I think it's because, in part, is they think that, well, and it is true in some part, that we're trying to duplicate them. We're trying to take their place. Whereas if they were to hear this objective, straight message, I think we'd have a lot more medical doctors and people like that going, hey, go see your chiropractor in addition to what we're doing here, because what they're providing is not a duplicative service for what we're doing here. Wouldn't you think so? If more medical doctors do that?
And that's going to elevate our profession without having to denigrate the medical profession. And I think that's one of the problems with one of the chiropractors who develop this synchronistic approach, is they have to belittle or denigrate the medical profession in order to try to elevate themselves. I
Sure.
think we need to get away from doing that.
Yeah.
And I think that we can elevate what we do as long as we show that it's a separate and unique approach, and it's a necessary approach, uh, and it's not a duplication of the
Right.
medical profession.
There's a bit of irony there, it seems to me, where you have the objective straight chiropractors who have probably a better relationship with medical doctors, even though we're not trying to do anything they want to, anything like them. And then you have the synchronistic chiropractors who are trying to be very much like them. And it seems they maybe are having more of the headbutting, because I'd be upset too if somebody who wasn't a chiropractor was trying to do chiropractic, who was talking about, if some physical therapist started talking about removing subluxations for innate expression, I'd be like, hey, no, that's our job. And then there would be that kind of confrontation or maybe headbutting. And so I think it's an interesting irony there, how the objective straight chiropractors could very well have a much better relationship with medical doctors than those who are trying to be like them.
I think that's absolutely right. And I spoke at a couple of medical schools over the years, and in fact, the first one, Reggie Gold and I went to, and I didn't say much because he was there, and he said it was necessary. But at that school and a couple that I attended or spoke at, I had a good relationship with the medical students, because they realized I made it clear that I was not in competition with them. And I think one of the schools advertised me as quackery,
Oh,
but
wow.
most of them, the students accepted what we said.
Right.
Some of the older professors that were in attendance didn't exactly care for what I said, but the students there, they were very receptive to what we did, because they understood that I was not trying to duplicate or denigrate or
Right.
replace the medical profession. That I had a unique service that I was going to provide for society.
Yeah. Well, it's a very logical message. Anybody who really has an open mind and just listens to what that message is, I think they'd have a hard time not going, well, that makes perfect sense. And
Mm-hmm.
so, maybe wrapping up here, for this interview here, if a chiropractor wants to make that change and they're thinking, you know what, I want to practice more in this fashion, where my purpose is to make adjustments to allow for better innate expression, simply for the objective of practice, not to treat a symptom, not to treat a disease or find its cure or prevent something. What would you suggest? Where do you start? What do you start doing today or tomorrow in practice to start making that change to a more objective, straight chiropractic practice?
Well, I think that what we need to do is first of all establish what our objective is and what our objective is not. Our objective is to enable the innate intelligence of the body to be more fully express itself, and I think that focus should be on getting people to understand that that's not the objective of chiropractic to get sick people well. It's the objective of the chiropractor to enable the body to heal itself, because only the body heals itself. Since the beginning of time, it's people, when the first person who cut their finger, they didn't go to a medical doctor, they didn't go to a chiropractor, they didn't go to anybody. They
Right.
just allowed the body to heal itself if it could. And the medical profession's purpose is to determine whether they think that the body can heal itself. Now, we may differ on times, at times, as to whether the body has the ability to do that, or the medical profession has to make that determination. With a broken arm, I would be, if any of my kids broke their arm, I would be in the same situation that you would. I would say, let's take them to a medical doctor and find out if they need to do it, or if they
Yeah.
had a hemorrhaging situation, or a heart attack, or any of those other things. I think that we need to make that allow somebody to make that determination. And if it's beyond vertebral subluxation, then let's enable the person to or suggest that the person go to somebody else and have that done. What that is, and there's so many other specialties in medicine that we need to go to somebody who can make a determination as to which specialty they need. If like a broken arm, you can pretty well see if something needs a first aid measure, like
sure.
your daughter, then you can make that determination.
Right.
As a parent, you didn't need any medical expertise to know that.
No.
You just you knew that she needed somebody's expertise. She sure needed to have her spine checked, whether that was whether that had to be done right away or that could wait till she had the arm set.
Yes,
that was a first aid measure that needed. And I think that that human beings should be trained in first aid measures, and that's taught in schools and taught in first aid classes.
Yeah, right.
So I think that we can do that, but I think that we need to get people to know that it's the body that does the healing, and I think most people realize that it's that.
Right.
But that should be the first thing that we need to do, and I think most chiropractors, or many chiropractors, think that the body heals itself, and they don't even bother to say, well, no, the body heals itself if it has the ability to do that. And we can determine if the person has the ability to correct the vertebral subluxations. The majority of subluxations has been corrected since the beginning of time, and without a chiropractor, without a medical
body's
doctor,
doing it itself.
Yeah, the body correct those subluxations, and all we're doing as chiropractors is just enabling the body to do it a little bit better, because it can heal itself a little better without vertebral subluxation. And I think that's probably the first thing that people should understand in a chiropractor's office is that the body does have the ability to heal itself within certain limitations, and it can do it better without an interference in the nervous system. And that's what we do as chiropractors, correct these vertebral subluxations to enable the body to work as well as it possibly can, or as effectively as it possibly can without that interference.
Perfect. And that's just it right there. I just love, it's just a simple message. Like you said, when we're teaching people the body is self-healing, they already know that. They already have that somehow in there, but we're just bringing it out in a way and putting things together in a logical sequence that it makes sense to them. We're just drawing out the information they already have in them. So making that transition maybe isn't as difficult as many chiropractors think that it is. And just educating people.
Right. And I think that the first thing I think is to get people to understand how fantastic the human body is. That most people think that, well, I need a doctor in order to enable me to do this.
Right.
And this body is fantastic. It has the ability to heal that gut. When I learned the clotting mechanism, it involved so many chemicals and all those things, and I've forgotten it all by now. Except I know that if I cut my finger, it's going to heal.
You don't have to know how it happens.
I don't know all the chemical reactions that take place. I've forgotten them, but I do know that the body has the ability to heal a cut finger, and the body can do some fantastic things, and it can do it better if interference in the nervous system at the vertebral level has been corrected.
Right. And so there it is. I mean, just getting the body at whatever its full potential is. We want to get it there by removing those subluxations so they can be at whatever their full potential might be. So, well, thank you so much, Joe, Dr. Strauss, for joining us today. And I just really, I hope we can maybe do this again in the future. And I want to say one thing, though. I asked the question, what can a chiropractor do to, make this transition? And I'm going to plug it for you, but you got to get all of Dr. Strauss's books. I mean, I think next to BJ, as far as I know, nobody has written more books on chiropractic philosophy for sure than you. I think there's up to 27 right now. Is that correct? 27 books you've written?
I think it's somewhere around that. Yeah, it's easier to remember how many kids I have than it is.
Yeah, right.
Somebody once said that if you want to have an impact in the world, you either have to have children or write books. And so
You've done both. Well, hey, here's maybe an unfair question to ask you, because it's like asking who's your favorite child. But of the books you've written, maybe what's your favorite book, or a book you just really love and that you'd say, hey, get this book before, if you're going to get one book, get this one here.
Well, I guess I would say that if I had to pick one, I would, it depends on where an individual's understanding of chiropractic is. And
sure.
if they really need to start at the beginning, unfortunately, a lot of them did not have Reggie Gold as an instructor in chiropractic school, and I was fortunate enough to have that, and he learned chiropractic from some great people who preceded him.
Right.
But I would say that you need to start off with the basics in chiropractic and chiropractic philosophy. The first book I wrote is a basic philosophy, and I've read it over recently and thought, well, did I say anything wrong in there that needs to be? and I think that everything in there, I probably could have expanded upon it, but I think that's part of the basics.
Chiropractic philosophy, the book. Yes. Chiropractic, yeah. Yes. Well, you're like an artist. An artist is never done with their painting. There's always something they can do a little better on that. So I'm sure you feel that same way about your books, but I'd have to say that they're pretty darn good. And I got one more quick little thing here, then we'll wrap it up. But I heard Bill Esteb say a long time ago. He said, besides the message of salvation, there's no more important message than the message of chiropractic. And I thought when he said that, I'm like, that is so true. The message of salvation first, but then the chiropractic message is a distant second, but it's still second. And I think that's true. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important that we get out and share this with people, because it is such an important message that can really change their lives. And I think that, again, you have done such a fantastic job of communicating that in your books. And so I just tell everybody, go to his website, Chiropractic Outside the Box, get all the books, get all the audios. And I got to tell you, besides your chiropractic books, I have it right here. This book here, The Nature of Man, fantastic book on a different subject, but the most important subject. So that one people can get on, I think it's the Christian Chiropractic Association. Is that correct?
I think they do have have that available to people. Yes, and of course that deals with things that are not pertinent to the practice of chiropractic.
Sure.
So that's why I left that one out. But it's obviously important to every other aspect of people's lives.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic book. And I don't know if you remember this, but you gave this to me on the parking lot at a New Beginnings. We were out at New Beginnings one time, and I was talking to you, and I asked you, what did you see? You have like notes in the book. It's like handwritten notes. You were like still editing the book. And so I cherish this one because of that. So that's a good one. I after you gave it to me, I got home and I started reading, and I'm like, oh no, I don't know if he needs this book or not, because there's actually notes in this thing and editing marks in it. So anyway, again, thank you, Joe, so much. And like I said, I really just want to thank you for all you've done. You're truly a legend in chiropractic, and I appreciate you. And I know this video is going to help a lot of other chiropractors to really make a big shift in their practice. So thank you so much.